it's not enough to just do the status quo. We have to be constantly up-leveling, self-investing, whether it's in self-development work, and that could mean, working with different types of people throughout your career. And a lot of times, I want to say this, Mike, it's so important. A lot of people feel that if they need some sort of help or they want to work with a coach, that there might be something wrong with them that they have to fix. Let me just squash that myth right now, because the top leaders and executives and very successful people all have a coach walking alongside of them. Coaching is not just for people that are broken or that are weak or that need some sort of major help. Everyone could benefit with working with a coach. And those that are in those leadership positions really should consider working with a coach, because it will keep you at this higher level. Everything you do in life is a choice. Everything you do is a choice. So just pay attention to what your choices are, and life will be fulfilling for you.
Our guest today is a perpetual life learner, a 7-time career path conqueror, a speaker, writer, coach, and entrepreneur. She's also a former gray area drinker that struggled with understanding how and why she landed there. And she's here today to help you have a better relationship with your vices and ultimately with yourself. Welcome to the show, the founder of GrayTonic and the Question the Drink movement, Kari Schwear.
Hey, thanks for having me. So excited to be here with you, Mike.
We have an exciting conversation ahead of us. Carrie and I recently met, so this isn't our first time meeting, but we intentionally didn't go too deep into it. It was like, wait a minute, I paused. I was like, pause this conversation. We're getting you unmiked up, and we're going to continue the conversation. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to our conversation.
And everybody who's tuning in right now, and they're like, oh, I want to know more about Carrie. They're reading the description before they're tuning in. You can check out her website. It's GrayTonic.com. It's GRAY tonic.com. All of her social media links are clickable in the show notes. We like to keep things super easy. And before we get into all the amazing solutions she brings to her clients and how she helps people get, kind of fall back in love with themselves and get them back on the right track. And that's in all different walks of life. It's not always, a drinking situation, but that's something we'll talk about. Before we do all of that, because I definitely want to dive deep into that, I'd love to get to know more about you, your story, and what inspired you to actually start GrayTonic.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, such a great question. And I love telling this story because it wasn't something I ever thought I would do. It sort of fell into my lap, so to speak. But in all seriousness, I really started this whole idea of not living the best life I could. And if you can believe it or not, it actually began when I was age 7. I remember sitting on my parents' driveway, hot St. Louis summer afternoon on the pavement, and looking around the neighborhood going, really? This is it? This is all there is to life? Like, I'm a kid. I'm supposed to be playing. I'm supposed to be having fun. And if this really is all to life, I don't even know if I want to be here. And I remember thinking, I'm 7. Like, who thinks of this stuff at age 7? And I thought that's not normal. I should be like out playing with friends. And that sentiment stayed with me for a very long time until I got into, high school and then eventually college and then meeting my husband. And there was always something that was missing. I just always felt like there was something that wasn't quite right, that there was some part of me that couldn't figure it out. And I felt depleted, but I didn't understand why. And, I did have some childhood trauma. A lot of stuff happened in middle school that was really traumatizing to me. And a lot of that played a part of some of my vices and my choices as I got older as an adult. It wasn't until I got into my 30s, I started, that was my beginning phase of really enjoying wine, to the point where I became a wine connoisseur. I was the head buyer. I was the food and beverage manager for a country club, and it was my job to select the wines for the club. And there was some prestige around that, oh, I'm so fancy. Look at me tasting all these wines. And that love of wine came home with me. Then I found myself drinking 1 or 2 glasses every night. And then that eventually turned into 3 glasses every night and sometimes even 4 glasses. So I found
You were
myself,
married at that point?
oh, yeah.
I want to dissect a little bit of the story. I'm going to let you keep
Oh,
going,
yeah.
but I want to get back to
Please
that
do.
little 7-year-old girl because I think it's
Oh,
important for people like separate themselves from their youth and then into their adolescent and young adult life, and it's become someone they kind of put on a mask. Whether it's a mask of masculinity like Lewis House talks about, or just a woman who's trying to remove some hurt from going down those paths again. But I'd like to learn a little bit and unpack some of it. But so you were married at that point. You had this kind of prestigious job where people are coming to you because you know something they don't know about these fancy wines, and you kind of have this little, it's part of your like character. It seems like, right, or kind of. But at the same time, you're like hurt. There's some hurt going on. Is that right?
oh, yeah. I had the worst case of deprivation. I just really self-sabotaged myself constantly. I was always complaining. I never could look at myself in the mirror. I had a complex on how I looked, and I was feeding myself, all sorts of negative coping behaviors at that time, whether it was constantly being in a toxic friendship. Not so much that my marriage was good, but just toxic friendships, toxicity to my body. I was a smoker at that time. Of course, that's when I was drinking. And, from the outside world, Mike, I looked like I had it all together. I mean, people would look at me and say, wow, she drives a nice car. She lives in a nice house. I mean, what could possibly be wrong in her life? And I kept that facade up for many years. I mean, another 15 years after that, I just was very good at faking it and showing the outside world that I had it all together, but that wasn't the case at all.
And obviously, something you've learned now, and I've learned in doing this show, is the most important thing in a relationship is relating and being transparent. And that's whether I'm talking to our audience, the people tuning in on YouTube or listening to this right now. Thank you guys for being here. We're relating and connecting in a way, even though we're not, face to face. And Carrie and I are relating, even though we're not in the same room, but we're doing this digitally. But there's a situation where when you kind of put on that armor, if you will, to try to get through life, things could be good, but at the end of the day, there's always something lacking when you're not fully being transparent. And that then these vices, and I'm not a psychologist, so stop me if I see your head shaking your head a little bit. These vices kind of come in to like hide it or crush it. And even if you have a good day, you're still going to go to the bottle, or you're going to go back into talking to that friend that always doesn't make you feel good. And you really need to cut them out because they're a leech, opposed to someone who you make them a better person, they make you a better person, a healthy relationship, So, but before we talk about, you in your 30s and having this job that kind of led you a little bit closer to alcohol and maybe being around it enough where you had the opportunity to potentially abuse it. Go back to 7-year-old Carrie. You felt this situation where you knew that it sounds like there was more to life out there. You knew that, and you said there was some stuff going on. Share whatever you feel is appropriate. But that's an interesting thing at 7 years old, because I have a 6-year-old daughter, and I know she's really intellectual, but we're not maybe thinking ahead like the way you were. Do you feel that it was like you knew that there was people had purpose, and maybe did you not have that like as a role model, someone who is connected to purpose? Were people just doing things to get things done, or is that
Oh, yeah.
maybe the lack of that you didn't have like that leadership maybe?
Yeah. My parents divorced when I was 9. So at 7, I was
Hmm.
already feeling a lot of the restraint between the two of them
Tension.
and kind of the tension. And, my dad wasn't around a whole lot then. He was, I mean, but not with the family. He was always playing golf, or he was away, or there wasn't a whole lot of family connection. Although,
Presence is different than being there. Being there and being present
correct.
are totally two different things, which I understand. Yeah.
Correct. And so the only time I felt like, wow, life is so great is when we were on vacation, which was once a year. And I thought, other than that, like this day to day thing isn't working. I mean, this is kind of sucks. Like I always had this negative feeling towards life and understanding why I was even here. Like, what is the purpose? And I started asking myself those questions so early on. And, even at age 7, another kind of profound thing happened. I declared to my mom that I was going to be a cigarette smoker. I had taken a cigarette from her friend Gladys, who lived directly behind us, and took it down to this lake in our neighborhood and had a pack of matches that I had taken and lit this bad boy up. And I smoked it and I didn't hate it, believe it or not. So I went home that day. I had my first cigarette at age 7, and I ran home and told my mom, I'm going to be a cigarette smoker. And she was like, no, you're not. And I said, no, yes, I am. And so I became one.
That's wild. Yeah.
I know.
And,
I waited
and
till
she
I was
didn't,
11.
she wasn't happy, but she didn't totally stop you either, huh? Like she just
Well,
was like, maybe there's other battles to pick with you, or
I guess she just said, no, you're not. And it was ridiculous for a 7-year-old to say that. So she thought maybe I was just joking or whatever. And, so little did she know that I started smoking on a regular basis at age 11, which she found out about it.
Did you go to, you had like a friend's house or somewhere you could escape to do that?
Oh, it was easy. She, by that time they were divorced and she was always working, and, it wasn't a whole lot of parental guidance at that time.
Not to a fault to your mom, but
yeah, exactly.
there was things that allowed you to you were a little bit invisible, and you felt that like, oh, I could do this.
Yeah.
Nobody's supervising the moment.
Yes.
That is a really good insight for parents tuning in right now, that it's parenting's not easy. I'm separate, divorced from my ex-wife. We were married for 6 years, and we got divorced in 2017. We have a beautiful daughter together, but it is tough for me because I'm not always seeing what she's doing when she's home with her mom, and her mom probably feels the lack of when she's with me for 3 days straight every other weekend. There's a little bit of whatever dad's doing, I don't know, right? Like we go somewhere or whatever, right? So the thing is, we have a good relationship though, so we do FaceTime every day, and I get to hear about the day, but it's still, that's kind of a different situation where I want to know everything that's going on and be as present as possible, even from afar. But it's tough. I mean, even loving, caring, respectful, amazing parents have jobs, have second jobs, have entrepreneurial careers that pull them in 47 directions daily, and we're not always able to be there with our children. So my reason for saying that is, it's a reminder to be even more present when you do have face-to-face time. Don't only just sit on the couch and have a cartoon on. Like, have some mindful activity where you can make sure you connect. Right?
Oh, I'm going to take this a deeper layer here.
Do it. That's why you're on the show.
Yeah, because listen, your kids, by the time they're 7, they have already emulated you. They formed beliefs. They're watching you. They're learning everything. It is proven. There's so many scientific studies done, neuroscience papers done, research done, hundreds and hundreds of papers proving that your child, even with you, everything that you believe and every decision that you have at this point is coming from a formed belief that was created before the age of 7, primarily before the age of 5. So when we think our kids aren't really paying attention to what we're doing, they don't understand what we're saying, that is so far from the truth. You could have a conversation with your spouse about money, for example, at age 4, and they can overhear the conversation and they can see the tension between the two of you. Say you're fighting over money. They can actually form a belief that money is bad. It creates problems. It creates tension in the marriage. It creates issues with relationships. And they can go on to have an issue with money later on in life. So that's one example. Another example is if, let's say, a dog growls at them at age 3, they can internalize that as dogs are not friendly. And then every time they meet a dog, they have tension in their body. And what happens? A dog senses energy and they sense that this child is afraid. So therefore, the dog reacts by showing some sort of tension back, which then creates the additional validation. Yep, dogs are bad. And now the more those beliefs happen, the more experiences that happen, the deeper that belief becomes, and that becomes a guiding north for a lot of us. This is how limiting beliefs form over a period of time as well. So we need to be very cognizant of how we're speaking and how we're treating our kids, and not just shoving them off in a corner with a device to keep them quiet, because now you're relying on that device to teach them things instead of you. So, we have a serious issue on our hands with electronics with kids, and the ignorance that we have as adults, that we don't know this. I didn't know this when I was raising my children. And so now if I have the opportunity to share that information, pay attention to what you're doing in front of your kids, because they are learning from you, which is, kind of scary when you think about it.
And we're coming at this from a non-judgmental place. We're telling you this from love. Anyone tuning in,
Absolutely.
like, Carrie's not over here saying, "Oh, never put an iPad in front of your kid because it's always bad." I mean, there's great learning opportunities and time and place for it. But if that's all that you're giving, obviously, then there's the lack, and then there's the desire for them to seek other things and get that love and care in other ways, and you don't know what that is, and that can be the scary thing. You don't know that's going on with your kid. But something you said, and I'm smiling over here when you're telling that analogy about the dog. I had an actual situation. It's like I thought you were telling the story over here. When I was a little guy, forget how old, maybe 5, 6 years old, I had a family friend's house. They have a pool with a deep end, right? I didn't know how to swim yet. A poodle. There was a poodle there that scared me into backing up, and I fell in the deep end. And I remember seeing my grandma's arm go into the water, and she saved me. I almost drowned and died in the swimming pool. I had to learn how to doggy paddle my way from the bottom. And I remember that moment in the water felt like it was 2 minutes. It probably was 7 seconds at most. I was all the way to the bottom. And then I just remember, like, you know how you naturally kind of float and you'll like eventually get yourself to the surface. That happened and she pulled me out. But ever since that moment, I was scared of dogs. I mean, I think I was already scared of dogs because if a poodle kind of moves and barks, it startled me. If I was, so I had like something about dogs that scared me. And in that moment, like solidified it that all dogs are bad. And every time I went to a friend's house growing up, after school, go hang out with my buddy. If he had a dog, I always had extra tension, and the dogs always knew it. They would find me and be like, "What's wrong with this dude?" And I was just like,
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Exactly.
really
It's
true.
validation. Mhm.
It's so true. I want to make sure because there's so much we can talk about. We have about 40 more minutes to do that, and I'd really love people to realize we're not only talking about one particular vice, or maybe you're thinking, well, this doesn't apply to me. It could be anything. Fill in the blank. It could be drinking, drugs, pornography, not sleeping. I mean, that's a problem I always do too, is I know the value of sleep and I never give myself enough time to do it, So there's different vices that you can fill in the blank with. And I want everyone who's listening right now to think about how this does apply to you. And I'll say this from my experience, before anyone can actually begin to make a change or be receptive to change, they need to realize it, all capitals, realize that there's a problem first. Now, once that happens, I feel like, the biggest challenge after that is getting them to agree to get the help. Can you walk us through that process?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, I really specialize in the gray areas of life. So, gray areas is anytime you're in between something, these, two kind of, in this wide spectrum, two opposite fields. And it started with me with my own story with drinking as a gray area drinker. But since I've been doing this work for the past 3 years, it's really expanded to other gray areas. So, when I talk about gray areas, I'm talking about relationships, like with a spouse or a significant other, a gray area with your relationship with your kid or colleagues. Perhaps you're in a job that you feel handcuffed to, and you're in this place where, gosh, if I could just get out of this job that's sucking the life out of me, and you feel like you're handcuffed there because of the benefits and the pay, then you are in this gray area. So the gray area encompasses a lot of different things. And yes, that does also mean some sort of coping mechanism, whether we want to refer to it as a vice or not. And again, for me, my story was drinking. So that's how I started GrayTonic, but it really has expanded to other areas, being in the gray. And a lot of my clients, Mike, actually seek me out primarily because they're connected to this idea of not feeling like they're living their best life, or they're in this in-between space. And yes, they might be drinking a little too much, or they might be smoking weed just to relax it in the evenings, or maybe they are in a relationship that they feel like they're really stuck in, and that's what brings them to me. But we all know None of that outside surface stuff is the actual issue. And it really is very difficult in the beginning to say, okay, gosh, I think there might be an issue here. And as soon as your brain starts to, or that gut feeling of yours starts to tweak those questions and poke you and, poke the bear, so to speak, listening to that inner voice, asking those deeper questions like, why do I feel this way? Do I have a problem with X, Y, or Z? I'll use drinking. Am I drinking a little too much? Is it normal, quote unquote, air quotes? Is it normal to drink 2 glasses every single night and 4 or 5 on the weekends? Is that considered a normal drinker? Like, what does that look like? If you're starting to ask any of these questions, again, fill in the blank, whatever situation it is, as soon as you start asking those questions, it should be an indicator to you that you need to pay attention to it. So listening to your gut is number one. And don't ignore those voices, because I did that. I ignored those voices for years. I was like, I'm like everyone else. It's not that bad. It is what it is. It's not that bad. And when we say it's not that bad, then it's really not that good either.
Yeah, you're trying to justify it to lessen the hurt that you feel. And that's
Yes.
normal. We're not saying, oh, you're human. Everybody is human.
Oh,
That's
absolutely.
tuning in. I think, I don't know if there's people in the ether that are tuning in from other planets that we don't know about, but
That's
yeah,
right.
but we're human, and it's okay to feel, and it's okay to not be okay.
Oh, you just said it. You said the magical words. It's okay not to be okay. We have to
Hmm.
be comfortable with not feeling uncomfortable. And that's exactly why people reach for a coping mechanism. This is why we stay in toxic relationships. This is why we're handcuffed to our job, because there's not either enough pain, or there's enough pain where we want to escape it or numb it. And this is why we cope, which is why we reach for things, is because we don't want to feel the feelings. We've never been taught to sit with our feelings. That's the first thing. And we want to escape that feeling of any sort of pain, or we want to relax or chill out. And then, of course, I have people saying, well, I drink, Carrie, not because I have a problem. It's because I really like it, which is just an excuse because there is something going on.
Look, I like having candy every once in a while, but if I eat half of a container of candy, in a short period of time, then that becomes a problem. And it is that balance situation. Yeah, drinking a glass of wine is great, but we want to make sure people are not. If there's all you're saying, this is what I'm hearing, is that
Mhm.
you want to find if there's some underlying stuff going on there. You want to help take care of it. The roots. You want to help the roots, because the tree is never going to grow quite right if the roots are broken. It's a great
Yeah.
analogy, because I was married for 6 years, and we were seeing counselors before we got divorced, and we kind of knew. Um, I had some issues going on. She had some issues going on. We weren't seeing eye to eye on certain things, and a lot of times when we went to those counseling sessions, it was a bad experience for me, because I always felt like it was her, my ex-wife, my wife at the time, the counselor, and sometimes they brought in the third person. So it was really like 3 people versus my side of the story. And I always tried to handle that with grace, but it also felt like everyone was talking about kind of correcting the situation, but not talking about the roots. And I was like, can we get into maybe why we're having these recurring problems? Because if you just put band-aids on our marriage, it'll last maybe a couple more years. We're still going to be miserable. Can we get to these roots? The roots never really got healed. And I felt that it was so dark that there was no place of return. And that's when I knew I was okay. So when she finally came to me and said officially that she wanted to get the divorce, I was like, I knew this was coming. And I think it's long-term healthy for us. Now, it wasn't easy going through it. It's still a devastating moment, especially having children. But why am I saying that now? Because you're somebody that can come in and help coach somebody, be on their team, and not judge. And you want them to get to the roots, even though it's going to be hard for them to reveal that at first. You don't just come out to meet someone for the first time.
Yeah.
But unless you really go and do foundational, fundamental root healing, their life is going to eventually kind of come back there. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, there's so many things I want to say to unpack with all of that. First of all,
Take it
is
away.
if somebody's in a relationship, this is a good example with a marriage. If you're really feeling like you're at this, your wit's end, you've tried to communicate, there's miscommunication, there's constant blaming, there is something else going on. Both of you are coming from some sort of trauma from your past, and we all have trauma, whether it's big T trauma, like the things that we think of that are very life altering, or an experience that you had that was extremely difficult for you. And we also have little T trauma. And little T trauma can be as simple as, a friend didn't call you back, and you internalize that as, you must not be good enough to be a friend to this person. And then you have this low self-esteem about yourself. So it doesn't matter what the trauma is, we all have it, and how we internalize it and how we process that becomes our guiding north. And our inner critic really is running a lot of the show. So that's one piece of it. The second thing is, going back to the marriage situation, we're bringing a lot of that baggage into a relationship. And unless we know how the other one is hardwired, and what's driving their behaviors, and what's motivating them, and understanding how they're thinking, we're not going to get to the root cause. So one of the advantages of working with someone like me is that I have this very deep assessment that's based on neuroscience that I have all my one-on-one clients do. And what we find is, and then they want to bring their partner in and do this information with their partner. And then we do a coaching session with both of them together for a few sessions to see why they're not communicating, why they're missing each other, what their emotional needs are. Because unless we're able to meet the partner's emotional needs and for them to feel safe, it's never going to be a great, strong marriage. So that's one example of some of the work that I do, is really understanding the person at the core, at their deepest core level, so we can work towards that. And that's one thing that I do for all my clients, so I can understand who I'm coaching. So that's one big advantage of working with me. The second thing is understanding that unless, and I alluded to this before, unless there's enough pain, you're not going to want to make a change. And so we stay in this mediocrity type living because it's not that bad. But if it's not that bad, then it's not that good. So my challenge to everyone listening is, where in your life do you feel like you have that gray area? And what's going to happen if it continues? What is that going to do to you? What's the toll it's going to take on you, your health, your life, your relationships? What is that going to do to you over a period of time if you don't address it? So that's one thing that somebody can do. And then we have these 6 stages of change. We have this pre-contemplation stage where we know we might need to make a change at some point, but we're not even close to being there. And then we have the contemplation stage, which is where I stayed in for a long time, is that, yeah, I probably should think about doing something about this, but it's not that bad yet. I kept saying it's not that bad yet. Nothing's happened yet. And then finally, I got into the preparation stage, which is when we start seeking out, we start gathering information, we start looking for, how will I go about making this change? Maybe this is when you are looking into coaching or counseling or therapy, or understanding how to move past the situation that you're in. And then we finally move into action. And action is where we start to make some progress. It's exactly what it sounds like. We're actually doing something about it. And then we move into maintenance, because the goal is, at least for my clients, is you're not going to be with me forever, like therapy or counseling. We're going to get you to where you need to go. We're going to close the gap, and then you're going to be off and running, right? You can't be tied to somebody forever. So the goal is to be in that maintenance stage. Now we can end up then going into that last stage of relapse. And if that happens, you just go back to the action stage, and you go back.
Okay, so you're not all the way back to the beginning. You go back like 2 steps. Like 2
Yes.
steps backward,
Yes.
or 1 step backward, 2 steps forward. But there's a couple things you said right there that I am, it's bringing out a lot of things I've learned over the last couple of years that weren't in my, mentality growing up. But something I realize is, and we both love Ed Milet, so shout out to Ed.
Ed, we love Ed.
Something he says is, whatever you don't hate, you will tolerate. And I don't know if he created that. I'm sure he pulled that somewhere, whatever. But I've heard him say it. Whatever you hate or don't hate, you will tolerate. And I think of that for myself. I was thinking about last night preparing for this interview because, again, I talk about not getting enough sleep. but I still allow myself to not get enough sleep. So I must not hate it enough, that doing that one last task or one extra thing each day that can get, set up for the next day. If you, whatever it is, if it's your weight, if you're talk yourself into being 15 pounds overweight and you're kind of, well, I don't look terrible, but I'm not in my best shape. That means you don't hate it. That means you're not going to do the hard things that are going to make the change. And the other thing you just talked about were 6 different steps. And as you were talking about it, like the kind of the pre-planning stages and like agreeing to do the plan into accepting it and then taking action, kind of reflecting on it and then potentially relapse. That's like business. You can apply that to life, personal life. You can apply that to your business. Is the planning stages, setting up processes, taking action, reflecting. Oh, the maintenance stage, that's important for anything you do, is once it's good, you got to keep it good. And if it's bad, it needs some work. Our houses need maintenance. Our relationships need it. Our personal well-being needs maintenance, right? Our health and well-being. You don't just eat healthy for a week and you're good for the rest of your life. And then you can also have a bad week. You can eat 3 fast food places in 1 week. You go on vacation. This happens. People gain 10 pounds after vacation because every night they're eating at a beautiful restaurant, or sometimes they're eating at fast food. And then you got to get yourself back. What do you do when you come back? Starting on Monday, right?
Yeah. There's an acronym I use a lot in my business, DECIDE. I love the word decide, decision, declare, all these D words. But decide, when we make a decision on something, it becomes our personal declaration. So an acronym that I use for decide is we have to have a desire to change, which is the D. We have to be able to have that strong desire in order to make a significant change. And that really comes within. And then the E is exploring your why. Like, why do you want to do this? And that why has to be deep enough. It has to have some sort of really deep value in order for that change to be significant enough in order to get the momentum going. So having the desire and exploring what that why is. The C is having commitment to self. If you don't have a strong commitment, and like you said, having enough pain, right? It's like going back to the weight analogy, you like your favorite pair of jeans or whatever, and you notice you can't even button them anymore. You finally get disgusted with yourself and it becomes enough pain where you're like, that's it, I'm going to start my diet. So having that commitment to self is huge. And then DECI, I had to spell it in my head. The I is invest. We have to be able to invest in ourselves. Yes, that sometimes means spending money, investing in yourself. Resources means getting
Coaches.
outside. Yeah, exactly. But it also can mean time, right? Time is such a finite resource, and we have to know that this is going to take time. There's going to be work involved. So investing in yourself has to be part of that equation. It doesn't always have to mean that you're investing into a coach or a counselor or some sort of program, but it does mean that you're going to have to invest your time and your other resources and know that it's the best thing for you if you're willing to do that. The other D is daily habits. Both you and I know the importance of daily habits, sleep that you mentioned, journaling. We all know, meditation, all the things, but there's other daily habits that can really, really help you. And, that's important. And a lot of my program is, let's talk about adding in all the really good edifying daily habits and squeezing out the negative ones. And really, while we're doing that, understanding why our brain is working the way that it is, so we can change the way that we're thinking and create new neural pathways. We can create new ways of thinking by disrupting that. And we do that by adding in good daily habits. And then the E is my own concept of everyday effort equals expansion. What we do on a daily basis, every single day, and we put that effort in, we will expand in our life. So this goes back to that maintenance piece on those 6 stages of change. When we move into maintenance, it's not enough to just do the status quo. We have to be constantly up-leveling, self-investing, whether it's in self-development work, And that could mean, working with different types of people throughout your career. And a lot of times, I want to say this, Mike, it's so important. A lot of people feel that if they need some sort of help or they want to work with a coach, that there might be something wrong with them that they have to fix. Let me just squash that myth right now, because the top leaders and executives and very successful people all have a coach walking alongside of them. Coaching is not just for people that are broken or that are weak or that need some sort of major help. Everyone could benefit with working with a coach. And those that are in those leadership positions really should consider working with a coach, because it will keep you at this higher level. I mean, I think about John Maxwell, for example, is one of my ultimate mentors that I look up to in terms of leadership coaching and being the best that we can be. And of course, we mentioned Ed Milet, even though he's not a direct coach. He is constantly preaching about up-leveling ourselves and constantly working on being the next best version of ourselves, which is such a cliche statement, but it is true. We need to be continually to get better and expanding in our life. So this everyday effort equals expansion is a huge part of my practice.
Mic drop moment. That was like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 mic drop moments in a row with Carrie right there. Holy smokes, guys. I'm going to go back. I always go back and listen to my interviews like weeks later, months later, sometimes even later than that, and relearn things that kind of, you learn them in the moment, but it's not a one-time practice. It's not a one-time lesson. It's something that you need to apply. And so this is going to be one that, and I just say, guys, go back, whatever that was, 5-10 minutes, and take notes on the DECIDE acronym. She laid it all out right there. 2 things that stuck out of that for a takeaway is time. First of all, it's an asset we never get back. And I know this, anything you focus time and energy on has the opportunity to improve. Like if you want to fix your weight, but you don't spend any time eating better, getting the right groceries, going to the gym. And I'm not trying to, look, I can lose a few pounds here. So I'm not trying to say but my point is, I know that if you want to correct something, you spend time in it, and you just talked on that. And that's so
real
important.
Good quote to fit in there is, what you feed grows and what you starve dies. Simple.
Yeah.
Simple.
And adding time to the equation in the other way, like people say, I'm just going to take some time off. You're adding wedges into it. More time separated is more time for wedges to come in there and bombs to be dropped in a bad way, like where there's going to be more turmoil that you have to address. Now the gap is even bigger. So time was one. And then the end piece, the E there, expansion, is that as you continue to grow, your maintenance looks different. Like when your maintenance is a skateboard, right? I'm going to use a vehicle analogy. There's very little you need to do to maintain it. But then you have a bike. Oh, you want to clean it, keep it looking good, pump the air, make sure the tires. Then all of a sudden you get a kind of a beater car. And the maintenance is like once in a while I give it a car wash and put gas in it. Then all of a sudden you get your first nice car and the maintenance on it looks different. And then you get your $100,000 car and the maintenance is crazy and you don't even know how to maintain it because you need specialists to come and look at it. So as your life continues to grow, those different degrees, as Ed talks about, your maintenance looks different. So you need different level coaches. And look, Michael Jordan has had a coach. The best players in any sport have coaches. Olympians have coaches. Coaches have coaches. Ed has a coach.
Yeah. Every coach has a coach. Yeah.
Totally,
I started laughing.
Totally great. Go back again. I'm going to listen to that probably 100 times.
I don't know if you saw me laughing, but when you're talking about the car maintenance, I couldn't help but laugh and think about Ed's story about his Velcro car.
Oh, I love that story. I actually did you watch the interview I did with him?
I did. So what we're talking about, guys, is Ed Milet, who we both are big fans of. He shared a story about how he wanted to impress his staff, and so he always wanted an S-Class Mercedes. So he bought one, but it wasn't a real Mercedes. It was a replica, and it was literally held together with Velcro. And half his bumper would fall off at the stop signs and he'd be putting it back on. And then the story ended up, he got pulled over by a cop and they said, this car is stolen. And here it was, his Velcro.
Because he shows what he actually had registered and it was Buick, right? And they're
Mhm.
like, yeah, this is not that. And what is this becoming, right? And they're kind of like interrogating him, like, is this turning into a DUI, boy? Is the way he explains it. And then the cop like popped, he had to tell the cop, right, that it's Velcro and embarrassing, but otherwise he's going in the slammer. So he tells the cop, like, look, this door can just come off. And the cop, of course, does it, pulls it off.
And
His whole
laughed like crazy.
yeah, they're bursting out and tears laughing. And then all of his team is like, what just happened? And it wasn't like spinning the door around or whatever. And it's so embarrassing moment, but a good example of kind of literally putting armor on a situation because he felt he needed this armor to
Yes.
show up at
He was
work in
faking
front of
it.
his team.
Yep.
But and he later didn't need to do that anymore because what he proved to be as a great salesperson, business leader, he didn't need that. But at the time, maybe he felt he needed it and that the suits that looked more expensive than they were, whatever. But I think it's an interesting story. If you guys don't know Ed, that's our version of someone that we look up to as a great mentor in the life lessons that he shares. But guys, it doesn't have to be Ed. It could be you. It could be anybody. Um, that's one example of something he did in the moment, but he grew from it over time and he learned from it. And it's a laughable thing, but it just goes to show that everybody starts somewhere. This guy, if you're not familiar with him, he had the water turned off early on in his story before his comeback story. And he literally, with his wife, they were like recently married, at their apartment, I believe it was, had to like go into the pool shower and use that for water to take a shower. And he had to hold up a towel to make sure that nobody nearby could see his wife as she took a shower, to now being like a $400 million man. So actually, Ed is one of the reasons I decided to take a chance on myself as an entrepreneur. And so I'm just saying, one of the reasons I do this show is to bring people like Carrie on so she can tell her story, and the 100 plus other guests I've had on the show all tell their individual unique stories. And that's why I do this show.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And listen, when I make it, I know, like, I'll know when I made it when I'm sitting next to Ed and he's interviewing me, which will happen, by the way. I have it written down. It will happen by 2025. So
This is the warm up interview, Carrie. I'm
that's
just getting you
right.
prepped up.
That's right.
People come on mic'd up and then they go on max out.
And
That's it.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Max out. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell
Hashtag.
you what. That's also on my vision board for myself. So maybe we can be, we can both have that experience. And Ed was very gracious to me. I got an opportunity on Dave Momano, a friend of mine, and shout out to Dave. He had me on as a co-host for his podcast before he changed the name, was called the Avanti Entrepreneur Podcast. And Ed was on as a guest, and he had me co-host it because he knew that I was a huge fan of Ed. Dave would have not learned about Ed, at least at that point in time, because I was sending him a bunch of videos saying, this is a great person for you to listen to and get maybe interview. And Dave took it upon himself to somehow pull that connection off. And so Ed was really, really cool. And he talked to me kind of off camera a little bit and gave me some wisdom. I wonder if I met him, I believe he would remember who I am, but this was like 2 years ago and he's interviewed how many people. So I think it's going to be cool when I have that opportunity to reconnect with him and say, you know what, back in 2018, 2019, when we first talked, everything that's happened after that in some way stems from the confidence you gave me from your content and also in that conversation, which is so cool.
Yeah, I love
It's a
him.
huge
My
impact.
husband has such a man crush on him.
Yeah, me
He
too.
just wants to play golf with him. That's it. He's
I
like, honey,
know.
you get interviewed and I'm going to go play golf with them. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that's the deal.
He's
Anyways.
playing golf with like, Jeter and Brady and your
Yeah.
husband, why not?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Why not?
I say this, guys, we're going to get to a break that was supposed to happen about 30 minutes ago, but I'm the producer of the show, so I get to choose when it happens, and there's no NBC or this or that tells me what we have to and not have to talk about, or when we do the break. But something about, we're talking about Ed and kind of celebrities, and realize that they're people too, and something that as I became an entrepreneur and been successful previous to this in business as a salesperson, and started to really get confidence in who I was as myself, and having some self-love go on. When you grow up, I'll just speak for myself. When I grew up, the athletes that we looked up to Derek Jeter is an idol of mine. I love Derek Jeter, what he meant to the game of baseball and how he played it. Michael Jordan, kind of a larger than life character back in the 90s and just a fantastic, maybe the best basketball player of all time. And, I think locally we had Jim Kelly here. I'm in Buffalo. And it always seemed like these guys were almost untouchable as a kid. Like you're not able to, it just seemed like an astronaut, right? Like I want to go to the moon. Just seemed kind of as like this larger than life thing. And then as I became maybe about 25, I got married, started to become a business professional and do well and start my own company. Now it's almost like I want to have dinner with these guys just to talk to them and pick their brain as friends. So if I met Ed, I don't think it would be incredible, but it wouldn't be like, oh, let me get your autograph. It would be like, hey man, like what can I learn from you, and how can maybe I bring some value to your life, Ed? And I know he's cool enough to be like, yeah, just because I have $400 billion in my bank and you don't yet, I can't learn from Mike. Like he knows he can still learn from anybody, and it's really exciting. So I'm just saying that to anyone tuning in right now that don't put these guys and gals on pedestals. If it's someone maybe you started your podcast last week and you have 10 listeners and you're thinking about, how do I get to be like Rachel Hollis or, Jenna Kutcher, who has the Gold Digger podcast and is so successful. How do I get to be like them? Well, they started off like you. Jenna started off in a closet because it sounded good in there for the acoustics. And she literally was recording her first podcast in a closet, and look where she is today. So with that said, I'm going to take a quick time out because I want to get back to Carrie and her amazing best-selling book on Amazon right now. It's a #1 bestseller. We're going to talk about that in 60 seconds. Don't go away. Podcasting is a great way to engage with your audience and stay consistently relevant. The only problem is you don't have the time or desire to produce your own show. You simply want it done for you, and that's where Social Chameleon comes in. All you need to do is press record and upload the files. We'll handle the rest. From planning, production, post-production, distribution, and digital marketing, we have you covered. We realize that times are tough and funds are tight, and Social Chameleon believes in building supportive business relationships. By clicking on the link in this promo, we'll provide you 7 free podcasting tips to get started, as well as a free 30-minute online consultation. This is the perfect opportunity for entrepreneurs, keynote speakers, industry experts, influencers, and anybody who has a personal brand. With Social Chameleon, we help you build a brand that is out of this world. We're ready and waiting, so what are you waiting for? Click on the link to get started today. All right, we're back in action with Carrie. You guys, again, can connect with her directly on social media and also check out her website, GrayTonic.com. It's GRAY tonic.com. Everything is clickable in the show notes, so go and dive into that. I just teased it right before the break. You're the co-author of a #1 best-selling book on Amazon called The Successful Mind. And you co-wrote that with 32 other people, right? Can you share that story?
I did. I was so happy when I got this message from this guy, Eric Stevenson. He actually is the head author of the book, and it was his idea. And he wanted to start a series, and he literally handpicked who he wanted, which was all these world-known experts in their field. And he contacted me and said, listen, I really want you to be able to tell a little bit of your story while teaching a methodology. What do you have? And I said, well, actually, I have a really cool methodology. It's based on neuroscience that I can teach, that I can write about, and I can do it in a narrative form. And he said, oh, that's great. Can you write about that? I said, absolutely. So my book chapter is on the SABRE method, which is what I use with my clients, and I'm happy to share with you what it is. But that whole experience of writing that book, and by the way, Mike, one of my goals last year, this was published about a year ago. So the time this is aired,
September,
yes, the end of September 21. I think the book came out, it came out in October of 2020. So
almost the 1-year anniversary then.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I'd written on my goal list or my vision board was to be a published author by the end of 2020. And I thought it was going to be my own book. So when this opportunity came along, I jumped on it. And it was such a good intro into writing and doing the whole publishing and editing and going through that whole series, with these other authors who I became friends with. So it was a really great experience. But we all brought something, whether it was, a piece of advice or a methodology or something that was really going to help us with our minds. And because we're all, experts in whatever field we're in. I mean, there's a lot of doctors in there and, psychiatrists and some really awesome experts. So we all came together to write this book, and each one of our chapters is different. So it's not meant to be read cover to cover. It's more like you pick and choose. So it's cool.
Right. And you can go back to a particular section. You don't have to read it cover to cover every time. I love that. I'm a highlighter. I love to have Ed's book is like every page is his highlight. I may as well just read it, every word of it, because it's so good. But I will be picking up The Successful Mind. I definitely look forward to that. No pun intended. Wanted to pick your brain on The Successful Mind. We're going to do a little bit more of that. There's also a book you have called The Tools to Living a Purposeful, Productive, and Happy Life. That's a book, correct?
That is actually the subtitle to The Successful Mind.
That's all part of the same. Okay, cool. Yes. I was reading it as two separate books because it leads me into my next question, kind of a transition into talking about a purpose-led life. You've unlocked it. I see that, the way you carry yourself, the way that you've taken your past, kind of the trials and tribulations, and you turned it into your purpose, which I think is amazing. Because in the beginning of the episode, when we started recording today, you were like, yeah, I kind of fell into it, but it was your life set you up to being qualified to be able to be the best coach you can today. So you're living your purpose, and so many people are trying to connect, huge word there, connect or reconnect with their purpose. Can you share some of the key concepts, and if someone feels like there's a disconnection there, how do you get back to it?
Oh, yeah. The truth behind being connected to a purpose is really lies within yourself. And, whether you believe in God or creator, universe, whatever you want to refer it to, as long as you have some sort of deeper connection outside of yourself is when you'll be able to expand in your life. Because if we just try on our own will, like, I don't know what my purpose is, I feel so stuck. We are going to feel stuck. Because again, this goes back to our limiting beliefs. This goes back to some incidences that may have occurred that keep us feeling like we're never going to be able to figure this out, or we get in the status quo or this mediocrity type living that I explained earlier. It's as good as it'll get, and we're never able to propel forward. So really finding the key within you, where are those blockages? Where are the lack or the deficiencies that you're feeling? And do you have a connection with some sort of higher power, whether it is God, whoever you believe in, or whether you just say creator or universe, whatever it is for you? If you have that deeper connection, you will start to feel more fulfilled. And that, that's not an easy journey, especially if you've never thought about things in a deeper way, but it is important to have that connection. And I will say too, because I didn't get to say this earlier, but as far as how I fell into this work, I wasn't seeking starting my own business. This was nothing that was on my radar. It really did just unfold. And as I always say, life works for us. We never have to worry about how life is unfolding for us, because the plan is the plan and our plan is a plan. And
I'll add to that. You have to pay attention though, because the signs were there for you that this is your path and that this is connect your purpose. But you had to take time and effort to just be mindful of it. Otherwise it would pass you right by, and you could be like doing a 9-to-5 banking job right now, successful or whatever, or a wine taste tester or whatever, have a role into that. But you were able to, you spent time and energy on thinking about purpose, which then it like you had the aha moment, right?
Yeah. Well, after I quit drinking, I did go the traditional route of going to AA, which, I have tremendous respect for, but I wasn't an alcoholic. So it was not a good fit for me. So when I left AA, after just 4 or 5 months of continually going, gosh, okay, well, I'm not drinking. So why is my life still not good? I worked with a coach. It was that experience that led me to where I am today, because that coach planted 3 seeds for me, Mike. He said, Carrie, I think you're going to start your own business someday. I think you're going to be a coach. And I think you're going to share your story with the world. And I literally busted out laughing and said, dude, what are you smoking? Because that's never going to happen. I'm not going to start my own business. I don't have a desire to do that. Coaching, maybe that sounds interesting. I don't know. And share my story? Are you crazy? I'm never going to tell anybody about my stuff. Like, that's my stuff. I'm not telling you. I'm very private like that.
The
Well,
words you
little,
just said were never. You said, I think
yeah.
can't showed up in there. I not,
Oh,
don't.
terrible.
Like
Yes.
all these limiting things that were spitting out of your mouth
Yes.
and in your brain.
Yes. And then it was later on that year, I was at church and they were talking about starting small groups. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to start a small group. And my husband said, well, on what? And I said, well, I can start something about being in this gray area. And long story short, the church and I didn't come to terms on what that might look like. And it kind of got a little on the uglier side. So I left the church over it. It kind of got it to be a bigger deal than what it should have been. And I left the church over it. I was so angry. And it was actually almost exactly 3 years ago. I just celebrated my third year in business, or my third anniversary, I should say. And my
Cheers to
girlfriend
that.
called. Yeah, thank you. My girlfriend called me that day and she said, hey, what's wrong? She could tell something was wrong. And I said, well, the church didn't want me to do this small group. And she said, what? Why are you even waiting for the church to, do something that you want to do? Carrie, start something on your own. So many people are following you you're coaching them. And I'm like, I never thought of myself like I'm already
Yeah.
coaching people.
Like
And
a
she said,
validation, like I needed an
yes,
organized situation
yes,
to fit into instead of you creating your own foundation that people
yes.
can fit into your system, which is cool.
Yes. And the other big piece of this was at this point, I was working a great job. I loved my job. I worked at Porsche. I made great money. I mean, fantastic money. I loved everything I did about my job. And I wasn't thinking about ever leaving. That wasn't in the cards for me. That's why I'm saying it fell into my lap. So got excited about the idea of creating something. And I did become a certified life coach. And then I went into two other modalities that I became certified in. And I really threw myself into my education. And by that point, again, I was already coaching a lot of people, that left AA or friends. And so at this point, I had 5 or 6 people I was coaching on a regular basis. I thought, well, dang, this could be a real business. And then before you knew it, there I was. I created a business and I'm going to my boss at Porsche saying, I'm quitting. And which my husband said, you make really good money. Are you sure you want to do that? And I said, yeah, let's not worry about the money. This is about purpose. This is about something greater than me. And I think that was the point I wanted to share was it became something outside of me. This wasn't about Kari Schwear anymore. This was about how can I give back? How can I share my story and my troubles and how can I give back to others? And that's literally how it started. And here we are 3 years later. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's service. It's serving. That's actually why I started the podcast was an opportunity to serve people. And I knew that getting the stories out, like your own story today and how you help people that can inspire our audience in many ways directly. And also I want them to have that self-belief and go and create more Carries and more Mikes and more of them, but be themselves. But say, hey, if Mike did this or Carrie did this or Ed did this or Susie did this, man, I'm next. Put me in line. Let's start that vision board. And the thing, like Porsche's a great company. It's a great brand. It was a
Hmm.
great job for you, but you could have either maybe gone back there if you didn't burn bridges or a different dealership or something similar. You could have worked hard to get right back in the saddle, but to properly maximize your potential or calling or purpose, what we're talking about, you need to take that opportunity because we literally have one life to live. And I interviewed somebody yesterday, and that's the whole conversation was really, really eye opening about him having leukemia, melanoma. And like this guy lives life every day. He's living it to the fullest, way like maximizing every minute of each day and be very mindful of it. And we have to remember, we do really have one shot. And if Kari Schwear is not going to be Kari Schwear, who the hell is going to be Carrie? You
That's right.
are you are supposed to go and be you. And whoever's listening right now, guys, go be who you're called to be. God, hey, I don't believe in God. Well, you got here somehow. And there was an opportunity presented to yourself. Maybe it's your parents. Fine. Then honor them in a way, whether they're with you today or not, in a way that you're actually doing the best with your opportunity. And I heard Gary Vee say this, and the numbers are probably going to be wrong. But when we become a baby, when we're born, we're one of like 5 million sperm or something. If you want to be that silly about it, think of the fact that you had that. You're like a one better than the lottery, and you're a human being on the planet today. And if you're only fitting into a cog into the wheel situation, and you feel lost right now, go back, listen to this one more time. Go back to that part where she talks about decide, the acronym, and I tell everybody to start to figure out what your greatness is, because I tell everybody two things: be great and be grateful. So once you have
Oh,
some
yeah.
great things in your life, every day start and end the day in gratitude. So,
Amen
Carrie,
to that.
I
It's
know
all
we're
about
running out of
perspective.
time.
Yeah.
It's about perspective, but let's talk about what you're most grateful for. What are a couple things that come to mind when I say
Oh
that
my
word,
gosh.
gratitude?
Mike, I can't even tell you. I wake up every morning now and I have such joy in my heart. I cannot believe that I get to do this for a living and that this is my life. All the way up to 5 years ago, before I quit drinking, I was like, again, I was in that place of really, is this all there is? You know, I mean, I'm long-term marriage. I have great kids. I mean, I live in a nice house, a nice neighborhood, all the things, right? None of that external material stuff was making me happy. I needed to find it within. And so now when I wake up, instead of this dread in my, like, ugh, what day of the week is it? I wake up every day like, what day is it? Oh my gosh, today I get to do X, Y, and Z. So it's this constant moving into gratitude, the perspective. I don't complain as much as I used to. I still complain from time to time. Come on, I'm human. But I
Sure.
don't complain as
You
much
catch
anymore.
yourself now. Yeah.
Yeah, it really changed my perspective on so many things. And I think it's really about the experience that we have, because the problem is never the problem that we think it is. It's always the meaning that we're attaching to something. And I've gotten really good at discerning over what that looks like and helping my clients do the same. Because if we come to our life, we wake up in the morning, we go to bed at night, we're like, gosh, this is such a gift. Like, I have another day, another opportunity, another chance to touch someone, or another gift that I can give. I mean, there's just nothing better. So that's what I'm grateful for, that I get to do this every day. It's not work to me. It's an absolute joy.
It's so true. And I have a hard time when I'm like relating with somebody who isn't doing that, because when I'm talking about what I'm doing, they may see me like working hard or putting a lot of hours in and trying to relate. But it's like, but let's be clear here. I'm not complaining. I get to do what I'm doing. Like, I create podcasts for my clients. Like, we're producing, distributing, editing. That's all fun. It's like a kid in a sandbox. It's like an artist who gets to paint all day long. Maybe they sell their art or contribute it in some way somewhere. It's a get to do. You hear athletes say that, like maybe they had a bad game, but they're like, I get to play a game today. I'm getting paid to
Yeah.
play ball, and you get paid to do what you love to do, is help people out, and you're doing an excellent job. And shout out to your husband also, who was supportive of you to make that
Yeah.
move. And cheers to you just kicking butt and what you're doing. And
Thanks.
this was such a fun interview that flew by. An hour just came and went. And
Thank
it's unreal that it's gone by so fast. I love your setup. You got this. If you guys are listening and not watching, Carrie's got this beautiful blue couch behind her, and it's like I wanted to fly out and actually do this interview in person to enjoy that comfortable couch in the background.
It
You
is
got
comfortable. People think it's a virtual background. I'm like, no, it's really
to.
it's my home office. I'm very blessed. I had envisioned this velvet blue sofa with nailhead trim for this office. And I walked into Home Goods. I have to get shout out to Home Goods. And there it was, $699. I didn't even sit in it. I'm like,
Wow,
sold. I'll take
that's the
it.
best $700 right there. That thing looks awesome.
Yeah, it's really
Um,
cool.
so you actually envisioned, or law of attraction, right?
Yes.
Um, Getting a blue
Oh, yeah.
velvet couch with the
Oh, yeah.
button pattern on it, and you walked
Oh,
into Home
yes.
Goods, and there it was with a
There it was.
reasonable price tag on it. I
Yes.
do believe in the law of attraction. I know we're not going to have enough
Yeah.
time to really unpack all of that, but I
Yeah.
can tell you, whenever I'm mindful of meditating on, praying on, and also taking action on things that I want or desire, it goes back to the one point of what you spend time on grows, or what was your quote on
Mhm.
that? What
Oh,
you
what you feed grows, what you starve dies.
what you feed grows. So when you're feeding the universe, the
Mhm.
universe wants to give us what we like to have. There's
Yes.
so much abundance out there. and this might sound like we're passing the doobie, around a campfire. Like, oh man, the universe is just giving me whatever I want lately. But
No,
it's
it's about
true.
energy. It's energy transfer. Like when we send out good energy, it will get it back somehow. And that also goes for money. People get so tied up with money. And I'm actually taking a money course right now. And it's not what you think. It's about energy with money. So I'll say this for anybody out there that's like, I wish I had more money. Here's the thing. When you become friends with your money and you look at money as just energy, it's just a resource that flows. It flows in and it flows out. We don't need to be so attached to money. When we start to get like, holding on with this tight grip is when we start to have money problems, or we move into a scarcity mindset when we don't need to. If we let go of that, because guess what? Most of us, I'm sure almost everyone listening to this podcast, has not lived under a bridge. You've always been taken care of. You've always had everything you needed, maybe not quite to the abundance that you wanted, but you've always been taken care of. So you should trust that you will always be taken care of. And so when you let go of this, got to hold on to money for dear life, and you just look at it like it's just money, it's just a resource
It's
that flows in
access.
and out. And thank money. Even when you pay something out, when you pay your bill, be grateful that you have the money to pay that bill. Be grateful for the money when you do get it in, whether it's a paycheck or another resource. And watch when you start to change and shift your energy about money, how money will start to flow more to you, because we have to have this perspective of gratitude. It all comes back to not complaining and having this immense gratitude for money, which is crazy if we start to think about it that way.
And like anything else, you can't fake it. You don't just say, I want money, I want money, I want money, I want money, and it shows up.
Yeah, exactly.
When you actually connect with that feeling of how it feels to have the abundance of it. Also giving, the feeling of giving someone a gift, whether it's tithing at church, or giving to $20 to the guy hurting on the side of the road, or I had a guy one time in line at a coffee shop that was like couldn't afford his meal in line in front of me, and I was actually hurting myself financially at that time. It was a couple years ago. I wasn't doing great, early on in my entrepreneurial journey. It was a rough patch, and I remember being at this coffee shop and like I had no reason giving this guy $20, but I remember doing it, and I didn't expect anything in return, but I'll tell you what, later that day, I believed I signed the largest contract in my business at the time. And I just remember being grateful, thinking,
Amazing.
okay, I know, God, you didn't do it just because I gave that guy $20, but it really feels good knowing that when you just be a good person and you put positive energy out into the world,
Yes.
it feels good when you get it back, because then you don't almost feel guilty, kind of. It's like, you should never like be nice to Carrie, so Carrie's always nice back to me. How about just be kind? Be kind, and some people will receive kindness and give kindness, but if someone's not nice to you, it doesn't give you the okay to be a jerk. And that just like took a different part of this conversation, went to a different
I
place. But I
know.
guess it just reminds me of whether or not it comes back to you. It's always a good choice to be gracious, to be kind, to be grateful, to be a loving person, right?
Yeah.
The universe will do its thing.
Yeah, I will say this. I have a client who is, he's fairly wealthy, and he gives a lot. I mean, a lot. He's probably one of the biggest philanthropists I've ever been around. He gives so much of his personal and in his business. And I got to tell you, it shows just in his demeanor. It shows in the abundance that he does have, because it just keeps flowing to him. So again, let go of that stranglehold you have on money and just be grateful. And
It's
see how it changes
access,
your life. Yeah, it's access.
I think of like being able, the things I get to do with my daughter. That's what money
Mhm.
is to me. It's the financial freedom of us saying,
Yes.
"Hey, I want to take her to an arcade, or go to a nice restaurant, or pop in and visit my family down in Florida, and sneak a visit to Disney because we're able to do it." It's those kind of things where I'm not thinking about the dollar sign. I'm thinking about the moments, the memories, and the time
Yes.
created that
That's
money
wealth.
gives you. That's wealth, instead of just like thinking about, oh my God, I just spent $900 on flights, and just like that was just one way or whatever. And people start to think about it in like a limiting factor, and then it will very much limit what you can do with it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I just bought
This,
myself first class tickets, by the way. Now that you say
there you
that, I
go.
was like, I've never treated myself to first class seats before on a plane. I'm doing it this time because why not? And at first I was like, oh gosh, do I really need to spend this much? It was like 3 times the amount of being in coach. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I need to do this for myself.
Right.
So it felt
Yeah,
good.
it was worth it without a blink.
Yeah.
Where's home for you? I know you told
Oh,
me when we
Richmond,
first connected.
Virginia.
So you're
Yeah,
in
Richmond.
Virginia. I'm in
Hmm.
Buffalo, New York. So we're not super close, but too far. I feel like we're going to do something collaborating. Maybe it's
Oh yeah.
someday you have your own show. I'd love to be on or have you on again. I'm going to say this. I don't mean this as any disrespect to my other 100 plus interviews I've done and guests, but this is one of those interviews I'm going to go back to and just be grateful that I had this time with you. And I also know when I was in the band, people always said, what songs do you either cover? We were an original band. So then they're like, who do you sound like? So then I would name like the top 3 bands that we kind of sounded like or that were inspirational to me that would make people understand it. And now I'm a podcaster, and when people ask me like, what do I talk about? I usually give them a couple topics, and like I drop a couple names. Like I've had Amberly Lago on, or I had Olympic World Cup Olympian downhill skier who holds the world record still
Wow.
20 years later, Carrie Mullen. Just some people come to mind, and Kari Schwear, you're on the list.
Oh, thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that so much. Thank you.
I appreciate this hour. And any last words you'd like to say to the audience before we part ways?
Everything you do in life is a choice. Everything you do is a choice. So just pay attention to what your choices are, and life will be fulfilling for you.
Bam, another mic drop moment to end it. Carrie, thank you so much for your time. That was awesome.
Thank you, Mike. Take care.
I'd like to give a huge shout out to everyone for tuning in, especially those who listen all the way to the end to hear this message. Seriously, I appreciate you, and my guests do as well. Giving a quick reminder to subscribe to this show. It's completely free and will allow you to receive notifications when new episodes are released. If you'd like to provide a tip as a gift, you can do so via patreon.com/mikedup. It's spelled MIKED up. Patreon.com/mikedup. You can give as little as $1 per month or as much as you'd like. Every dollar is greatly appreciated and completely unexpected. Appreciate your reviews and your messages coming in on social as well. Keep them coming. Your feedback is valuable and absolutely means the world to me. You can check out more episodes and content at mikeduppodcast.com. We're powered by Social Chameleon. You can also follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active, and it's at Mike DiCioccio, MIKEDICIOCCIO. Thank you so much for your continued support. You guys know what to do. Be great and be grateful.